Okay, everyone, we are live. We go to our promotional video. Just 1 second, please.
When talking about building engagement and excitement through virtual experiences, the finest platform out there, Virtual Console, offers an unmatched solution. A do-it-for-you platform, Virtual Console offers an end-to-end tech solution that enables our clients to create personalized and custom events in just 48 hours. While the platform remains easy to use and navigate, assistance and support is available at every step to create a seamless experience. Not only is the platform scalable, varying participant sizes, it has proven to be cost-efficient. Let's explore the various features that Virtual Console has to offer. The attendees log in using an email ID or mobile number and enter the lobby area, which has event and partner branding, along with various speaker profiles and agenda for the event. Public and one-on-one chat functionalities, along with breakout rooms, enable attendee interaction. Attendees then proceed to the auditorium, where all the action lies. And the Expo Center offers partners their booths with networking and lead generation opportunities. Attendees can see glimpses of the event in the gallery. Virtual Console offers in-depth event analytics to ascertain and track the attendee touchpoints, time spent across various functions, and beyond. Let us have a look at something Virtual Console recently put together for one of our clients with over 3,000 attendees. A creative, captivating, customized, and cost-efficient solution by Virtual Console that meets the purpose and delivers beyond expectations. With the changing times and trends, it's time to bet big on virtual events and experiences. Trust us to be the virtual event solution specialist you need. Virtual Console, here to deliver. Book your demo with us at Virtual Console.
Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Travel Tech Asia Pacific second edition. Today's session is on Destination Japan, where we'll discuss travel recovery post-pandemic. My name is Neha Ginoria, and I am your host for the day. I head up marketing for EateOfMax Rate Tiger, which is one of the pioneers in hotel channel management and rate shopping tools. I feel privileged to be moderating today's session and be in company of such esteemed panel members here. I'm stepping in for my friend Vinicius Duraldo, who's the founder of Travel Tech, who has done a commendable job of creating this massive educational event series. The Travel Tech series of conference was launched last year amidst the pandemic. The aim of Travel Tech is to assist and guide hotels on how to adjust their operations to regain profitability, no matter how the COVID pandemic affects demand. The Travel Tech series brings together hotels, OTAs, hospitality and travel tech companies and professionals to learn about operational tools and obtain actionable insights on how to leverage recent innovations to speed up the travel recovery process worldwide. It is one of the biggest online events and completely independent. We want to thank all our partners and sponsors for their support, for joining and participating in the discussions, and for sharing their knowledge. I would now like to welcome our speakers for today. I have with us Mr. Ashley Harvey, General Manager from AVIAREPS, Japan.
Hello.
Mr. Takahiro. Hey, Ashley. Do you want to go ahead and just give a brief introduction about yourself and your company?
Yeah, sure.
Like
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for stepping in at the last minute. My name is Ashley Harvey, General Manager at AVIAREPS here in Japan, and happy Friday from a very rainy Tokyo as we move into the rainy season. So I've been in Tokyo for the last 10 years almost, and have worked at Visit Britain as well as inbound destination marketing, and now for the world's largest travel tourism hotel PR agency. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Ashley. Welcome on board, and really excited to hear from you as we move ahead in the discussion. Our next speaker on the panel is Mr. Takahiro Noguchi from the Beauty of Japan. Taka, do you want to just take a minute and introduce yourself?
Sure, yes. My name is Taka Noguchi. Beauty of Japan is a boutique DMC based in Tokyo, specialized in FITs, group tours, arrangements, as well as incentives. And we also have a platform where we sell our unique experience tours and activities online that covers nationwide. And we have about 300 or 350 unique programs. So thank you for your time to join this event, and I'm very excited. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taka. Really excited myself, and great to know about the programs. Next speaker today is Mr. Alex Bradshaw from Shimatsu Gotoku LLC. So over to you, Alex.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. So yes, I'm Alex. I live in Kagoshima, which is right in the very south of Japan, actually. The southernmost point of the southern island, Kyushu. And I work for, three major roles. The first being Shimazu Limited, which owns and operates Sengaim, which is a UNESCO World Cultural Heritage Site, and house and gardens built in the 1600s. The second is I'm the Director of Overseas Communications for Kagoshima Prefecture. So I work on tourism development on a local level and also promotion abroad as well. And then Gotoku is a consulting and advisory company that works with national and local regional governments on tourism development and promotion as well. So I work on the attractions side and also on the tourism development and promotion side as well. Thank you very much.
Wow, amazing. Amazing. I already feel like going to Japan hearing about all these names. Our final speaker on the panel today is Mr. Satya Osawa, who's Director Digital for AVIAREPS Japan. Satya, over to you, please.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Neha. So as you mentioned, my name is Satya Osawa, Digital Director here at AVIAREPS Japan. I handle all things digital for clients across the DMO, hotel, airlines, also product landscape here in Japan for B2C marketing. So that's driving digital strategy, looking at customer experiences, providing digital consulting as well for those clients, and very excited to speak with you all today.
Thank you, Satya. I would really extend a very warm welcome to all of you and thank you for joining in today. I'm very excited to be hearing this discussion and try and put in my 2 bits. So without further ado, let me also welcome all our attendees and viewers who are watching the session live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. I request you to please use the chat or the comment box to ask any questions you might have for our speakers today. We'll take the questions towards the end of the discussion and try to address all your questions. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll get started. We'll have around 1 hour 45 minutes for the session, in which we'll try and cover a couple of rounds of questions. And before that, again, a word of mention for the founder of this event, Vinicius Duraldo, who's actually unwell because of possibly sleep deprivation and, crazy working hours, thanks to putting this wonderful show. So big thumbs up to you, Vinicius, and please get well soon. And with that, I'm moving into my first round of questions. I will start with Ashley. Ashley, I would like to know from you what, according to you, are the macro reasons for the pre-pandemic inbound tourism boom, and what does the country need to do next?
Hi, yeah, thanks very much. So, once upon a time, tourism in Japan was a very sort of distant dream. And I think there's 3 kind of big macro factors that drove inbound tourism around from about 2012. So if you set that benchmark at 2010, 2011, which was the nadir of Japanese tourism, you have about 9 million inbound tourists. And by the time we hit pause, just as this pandemic hit, Japan was at 32 million tourists, give or take. So quite a huge growth. And I think from a very top line picture, there was 3 big things. Firstly, 2012, when the Abe administration came in to government, they wanted to drive exports and they lowered the yen quite rapidly. And obviously, tourism inbound flows is actually an export in terms of the currency exchange. And that was the first big thing. Suddenly, Japan was cheaper than what it had been, 33% within 3 months, as best my memory recalls. That was the first key thing. The second key thing they did was then look at tourist visas and requirements for that. So initially, they just wiped all pre-application visas for Southeast Asia, and then eventually China, so you could get a visa on demand. So Japan suddenly became cheaper and easier to get to. This was within about 6 months, 9 months of the government coming into power. And then finally, in September 2013, I remember it well because I happened to be in a Chinese restaurant in Manchester, England. Japan was announced as the winner of the host of the 2020 Olympics. So there is another backstory to that now. But back then, suddenly Japan was, after the triple disaster of the earthquake, tsunami, and the nuclear issues, suddenly Japan had a good news story. So I think it was those 3 big things: reduction in the value of the yen, wiping of the restrictions on visas for the near neighbors. Obviously, Japan's geographically blessed to be next to China, which is a huge market, which has been the fuel which has driven tourism engine. And then this idea that the Olympics was that Japan was back. Suddenly they had a narrative, they could change the narrative, and they had a focal point to develop. So they had 7 years to look at the development of tourism from Japan, with the goal of capturing that post-Olympic tourism boom. So that's kind of the summary of how we got to 32 million. Taco and Alex have much more direct experience in delivering that product as the tourism came in. And I think, you know, we have an opportunity, and it's not just Japan, it's pretty much all tourism businesses across the globe, to think about what do we want tourism 2.0 or post-pandemic to be. There was once upon a time an issue around over-tourism. I don't know if you remember that. Seems kind of a distant memory ago now. But I never felt over-tourism was actually the key problem. The key problem was under-tourism in about 90% of the places, and travelers just being funneled through one or two key places. So those one or two key places in Japan were certain parts of Tokyo and Kyoto. Kyoto ended up with about 88 million visitors in 2019. And I think some of the issues around that are that the city becomes hollowed out. Venice became hollowed out. Barcelona became hollowed out. Kyoto became hollowed out. As an example, in Kyoto, there are now more hotels in Kyoto than there are convenience stores, and convenience stores in Japan are ubiquitous. So there are some things as we come back that I think we need to look at seriously and develop. So I'll leave it there and pass over to whoever's next.
Thank you, Ashley. That was like a, you know, in a capsule, how the last 7, 8 years, 10 years have been, and how Japan has moved from, you know, where it has. So I open this discussion for our other members. If anybody wants to add anything further or have any opinion on what Ashley just shared, or if you want to elaborate any particular point, please feel free to, please add in, because we want to make this an engaging discussion, and your thoughts are really very valuable here.
So basically what Ashley said was, you know, a great summary of what happened in inbound tourism, and I've seen over the kind of last 5 or 6 years that I've been involved with it. I think one thing that needs to be mentioned is probably low-cost carriers as well, and the kind of proliferation of those airlines coming from, you know, East Asia into Japan, and also flying domestically as well. That's kind of significantly reduced the cost of travel within Japan. But as Ashley said, you know, the regions of Japan are still highly underutilized, and there's a huge concentration of visitors in the major areas of Tokyo and Kyoto, which is kind of skewing public opinion towards, you know, a negative image of over-tourism and a negative image of tourism generally, I think. And that's something that we need to address going forwards.
Right, and thanks Alex for that. And that brings me to a question that suddenly popped into my mind. This is for Taka, actually. So Taka, you were Beauty of Japan, and I'm not really very sure about all the aspects that you cover, but like Alex mentioned, like, you know, a few places that are obviously overexposed. So is there anything specific, some initiatives that possibly you guys are looking at or have tried to implement where you could expose, you know, other cities or other places within Japan through your programs? Would you want to share something on that? Yeah.
Sure. I think that relates to my next question. But of course, first time I want to go to Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, perhaps Hiroshima as well. And I think I mean, these are great places, but it's a huge cities. I mean, Tokyo is like more like, you know, London, New York, a lot of buildings, a lot of people, a lot of restaurant bars. But the city was built after World War II, so it's like 76 years ago, right? But the real Japan can be seen outside cities in like local regions. That's where you see our lifestyle, the real, you know, Japanese living, meet with like interaction with locals, natures, food, culture, tradition, history. So that's how we try to convince guests that Tokyo, Kyoto are not the only places where you can enjoy Japan, but visiting the local places, you will have actually different experience. So that's what we are trying to do. And to add, Ashley's great summary. In 2003, Japanese Prime Minister, back then was Mr. Koizumi. He was the one who began the Visit Japan campaign in 2003. And since then, they have allocated one budget to JNTO, the Japanese Japan National Tourism Organization, and they have offices in around the country, around the world. Then they spent more promotional budgets to those foreign offices. and now they're continuing to expand the office to promote Japan. So that is another reason as to why Japan it's seeing the travel industry boom.
Thank you so much for that, Taka. Actually, you're right. I will actually bring in the question that I had for you. And since you've mentioned a couple of points already, why don't you further elaborate on what kind of marketing strategies should local regions take in order to attract foreign tourists post-pandemic?
It's a mixture of a lot of elements, obviously. But one thing I always keep in mind is the local experiences. This like something unique and premium. For example, meeting with like farmers, and you experience like farm to table kind of experiences. Meet with like local artisans, people who make knives, swords, kimono wearings, something that you cannot do in big cities like Tokyo or Kyoto. Like these meeting with local people are something that that we push when we propose itinerary to include local places. And in post-pandemic, I'm hearing a lot of requests about nature and well-being. I guess a lot of people are stressed because of stay-home restrictions for a long time, actually, and they just want to be released and get lost. So I'm hearing the request that I'm receiving for next year is less night spent in Tokyo, Kyoto, or big cities, but more time they want to spend in local places. Obviously, they can avoid a crowd in local places as well. I think that's going to be another reason. And when it comes to strategy, there are so many beautiful local places in Japan. It's really hard to educate consumers. But I think we have two kinds of push strategy and pull strategy. Push is to approach the consumers direct, perhaps through digitally like Instagram and YouTube. Another one is going to be pull. It's going through agents. We have to educate agents, travel agents in foreign countries, because a lot of consumers ask concierge or local agents, especially in upper class clients. So we want to make local agents to propose the local area to the clients, so that they will think of the visiting local places. I think this is a kind of question that I actually wanted to ask an opinion to Alex, because he lives in Kagoshima, and he is the tourism consultant in that region as well.
Yeah, it's difficult to draw people to the regions, mainly because of, I think, lack of awareness to begin with. So the brand of Japan is so very powerful that it actually overwhelms all the kind of sub brands of different regions as well. If you think about France, for example, you can think about Paris and Provence and Cannes, Nice, the south. There's kind of regional distinction between the areas of France. But when you think about Japan, people often just think of kind of kimono and tea ceremonies and geisha and things like that. And in recent years, it's true that places like Niseko in Hokkaido have kind of developed a ski tourism image for themselves, and Japanese powder is very, very well known as being extremely good. But there are opportunities, for example, in beach tourism like Okinawa, Amami Oshima, the southern islands in Kagoshima Prefecture, where I am, have huge potential that's not being fully exploited. Also, other regions with their own particular local cultures, festivals, hiking, outdoor activities, cultural activity. I mean, the list goes on. It's just basically a lack of awareness and a lack of knowledge about how to promote these regions as well in the kind of Japanese tourism industry. So it's a market with a very, very strong domestic tourism segment. One that annually makes a huge sum of money, but there needs to be more awareness about what the needs of foreign visitors are and how to appeal to those people as well. But the stuff is there. It's just getting people to know about it and want to book it.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Taka, for sharing your inputs on that. I have two points here that I was thinking while you guys were talking. So one is we spoke about low-cost carriers. Alex, I think you mentioned that earlier. And so is connectivity to these, lesser known destinations. So I'm talking as a traveler right now. Obviously, most of the cities are very well known, but to the lesser known, lesser traveled places as an outsider. So how is the air connectivity, or in general the connectivity? Is it easy for people to reach, or so that is one question, and whether that impacts the number of travelers that reach these places. And second point that I wanted to mention here was in terms of how what exactly are certain things. So here Taka mentioned about the push and the pull strategy. So are there any particular examples that, Taka, you can share that you are looking to implement specifically for the post-pandemic to attract more visitors for these lesser known places? So you did broadly mention, but anything maybe from a hotel specific perspective that could be useful for hotels who might be watching us here today?
So just quickly for the access point, and then to pass on to Taka. Obviously, Japan's got a highly developed network of rail. The Shinkansen, the bullet train, is a highly convenient way to get throughout Japan. The local rail network is also extremely efficient, cheap to use, clean. No complaints there whatsoever if people have the time to go by ground. By air, there are domestic flights all over Japan, regularly departing from airports all over the country. Regional airports, even in Kyushu, where I am, which is quite a region, in the countryside, have, direct flights to Hong Kong, Shanghai, Seoul, Taipei, as well. So the access is there. It's just the awareness of that access. So often we see guests, for example, from Hong Kong, who will come in through Fukuoka Airport in the north of Kyushu and leave through Miyazaki Airport or Kagoshima Airport or somewhere else. Those kind of East Asian visitors on a shorter trip, 3 to 4 days, are very, very aware of these routes and use them frequently. Western travelers coming from Europe and the US and also, Australia, countries like that, tend to go through Tokyo. So they will go to Haneda, and then they will, go on the bullet train or perhaps fly to different regions and then return to Tokyo to leave the country. And to me, that seems like a bit of a kind of waste of time, because there are other airports and areas that you can access. You could fly from, for example, Kagoshima to Hong Kong. Hong Kong's an international hub. You can fly, anywhere in the world from there. So just that awareness of these routes and using them is quite important. But it is certainly very possible and extremely convenient.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Alex. Yep. Taka, do you want to go ahead and highlight? Yeah.
Yeah, about the, for example, hospitality. In Japan, there are quite a few kinds of accommodations. It's not just the hotels, but we have like maybe staying in the temples, for example, with Japanese monks. You stay in machiya. Machiya is like a traditional house, traditional style house in Kyoto that was built like 100 years ago, and that's fully renovated to comfortable accommodations. And you sleep in the ryokan. Ryokan is again our traditional style inn. So you sleep on the tatami mat with futon, and you soak into the hot spring. We call it onsen. These are mainly located outside of big cities, and these are something that makes unique and premium, I think. And this is one experience that we always want the foreign tourists to do this. And actually, I wanted to ask questions, how to promote Japan or local regions to Ashley and Satya, because I guess they are the one who are the professionals to promote Japan.
Yeah, Ashley, I'll chime in here if I may to answer that question, Noguchi-san. So, one of the big strategies and tactics we've seen, surprisingly from JNTO, for example, and increasing awareness to these lesser known destinations throughout Japan has been through a mixture of social media presence, as well as bringing in influencers like YouTubers. Some specific names for some great YouTubers that are doing a fantastic job at this. One is a British expat living here in Tokyo, and his channel is called Abroad in Japan. He has a little over 6 million followers now, or subscribers to his channel. And he's actually recently, back right before the pandemic hit, was tasked by JNTO and also working with government of Japan to go to these lesser known destinations and go to rural areas of Japan to show the culture, the traditions, and basically what people are missing by staying so focused in the Kyoto, Tokyo, and these Instagram spots, we call them, right? Everybody wants to come to Japan to get that selfie by Tokyo Tower or at Meiji Shrine. So that's one example of how you can bring in influencers, right, to showcase and to highlight these lesser known destinations. Another popular channel is Paulo in Japan. He's a half Brazilian expat, and he's been showing kind of the same concepts, right, of visiting rural destinations, highlighting the unique either tableware or ceramics that are being made, looking at farming in Japan, and which is not for everybody, but again, these are very interesting topics that get lost. Like Alex mentioned, people generally think kimonos, tea ceremonies, and so really broadening those horizons. And then looking towards social media, that's an ever increasing field, right? And the influencer market in particular. 2019, it was around 8 billion, 10 billion valuation globally. And here in 2 years, that's set to double to almost $17 billion that the advertising and marketers are spending in using these KOLs. And I think not only for Japanese, but for international travelers, for inbound tourism, they're doing a lot of homework and research. And so having kind of an omnipresence on digital channels, making sure that you have all those relevant touch points ironed out, right? So you have that social media presence, you're working with influencers who speak to your target demographics. All of these tools, along with, of course, SEO, tracking, analytics, and digital tools, which we can go, very deep into in this discussion. But I think generally you just have to make sure that you're using digital to the best of your ability and working with influencers, YouTubers, to get the word out about what is unique with really great content and video to showcase that.
And to add to that, thanks, Satya. I suppose on the flip side of it, we've been talking so far about the work that Japan is doing and could be doing to push information out. The other side of it, where I think Japan Tourism 2.0 needs to step up, is that of destination management and its strategy around developing the regions and the tourism experiences which will get people out of these pinch points of Kyoto and parts of Tokyo and into other places. So it has been left in the last 10 years to the private sector, such as Alex or such as Taka, as well as also the guys up at, for example, Satayama Experiences in Gifu. But there hasn't really been a holistic effort across the board to look at the development and raise the experience of what the international traveler might want. Huge money has been spent on promotion. Little to no money that I know of has been spent in any real strategic sense on development. And that's part of the problem, because you suddenly have an experience map as a consumer of Japan that is really patchy once you step out of the main cities. And if you take the wrong step, you'll have many tourists fleeing back to where they've come from once they think, I can't even get a coffee anywhere. So there is an element, I think, around getting the development plans in place as well. Alex mentioned, and you've mentioned how good the infrastructure is, and that is true. But actually, the experiences around the country are patchy, I think.
Yeah, I think a key example of this would be like for the very popular ryokan and onsen, which for Japanese and for us, fortunate to live here in Japan, get to experience. But I think for a lot of travelers, when they come, one of the first things when they research is that, oh my goodness, if you have a tattoo, you're not allowed to go to these onsen. And so immediately they just check it off their list. Okay, no, I'm not going to go there. It's too much of a hassle. I don't want to, deal with any problems or confrontations with that. And so, just something as simple as that can completely dissuade a destination. If onsens, like you look at like Hakone or Karuizawa, where onsen is the main draw, along with some golf courses and beautiful hiking. But if they think there's no way it's going to be too much trouble for me to go because I have a tattoo, then right there, there's been a failure on part of the destination and the establishments not to make those accommodations or make it easily known to tourists that are interested that we accept everybody, no problem, and it's just a small cultural thing that will take time to change.
So just curious, is that a thing that you cannot actually go there with a tattoo?
Yes, you have to specifically reserve a private spa essentially. If you can't go into the mixed bathing areas at these locations, at many traditional ryokans, and most of the nice, the very nice and luxurious ones, they all have this policy.
So it depends on the management of the ryokan itself. So actually, the Rugby World Cup promoted a lot of places in Kyushu to allow people with tattoos to come into the onsen, but there's no one kind of rule per se, so it's very difficult for travelers to know whether they'll be welcome or not. And sometimes they have to put a skin colored patch or plaster over the tattoo to cover it up. So my question there was, if you drew in pen the same tattoo on top of the patch, would that be okay or not? But that's a bit.
You must be really popular when you go to the onsens, Alex, and ask questions like that.
Yeah, I know they love it. They love the the challenges.
Great,
all that being said, one of the great things I think in the digital realm, though, is that is seeing with AI and the progression of various applications now that I'm quite envious because 15, 20 years ago when I was coming to Japan, we didn't have these digital tools on our phone to navigate rail systems or read menus or anything, right? And now that has opened, I think, and broken down a lot of barriers within Japan, and that's why we did see, I think, such a huge increase up until 2019. A boom year for tourism here in Japan. So that's only going to get better, and so I think these different regions in Japan as well, as long as they are aware of these tools, then they can also promote those, on their destination websites, and saying, hey, please use this app, or we have this app to help you read the menus, at our restaurants, or all sorts of different ways technology can be used to break down those barriers.
Right. Thank you, Satya, for sharing that bit. So I will move to my next question for Alex. Alex, I would want to know from you, what, according to you, are the major changes that have taken place in the Japanese travel industry in recent years? I think we have touched a little bit on that, but I would want you to elaborate. And this is in specific to meeting the needs of modern customers. And also, what changes are we likely to see in the domestic travel and tourism industry?
Well, I think a lot of the problems that Satya, Ashley, and Takahiro have all touched on, can be more readily understood if we look at how the Japanese domestic travel industry currently is, and how that's changing as well. Because a lot of the key players in the Japanese tourism industry know the domestic market much better than they do the international market. and changes that affect the domestic travel sector will have a knock-on effect to international tourism as well. So just to talk about my background with Shimazu, I mean, I work at Sengain, which is a tourist attraction essentially in Kagoshima. The museum we have here opened in 1923. The gardens opened to the public in 1947. So we've been a tourist destination for a very long time, working with the key partners in the Japanese domestic market for all that time. And we get about 500,000 visitors a year, 70% Japanese, and then 30% from overseas as well. So I've seen a lot of changes over the past 5 or 6 years that I've been involved with this company. And I think the key thing to understand is that Japan has a very developed domestic tourism market, but it is outdated. Agents are still sending faxes to each other to book, entrance to places and restaurant reservations. There is a slow shift towards, digital transformation and kind of a more efficient use of time, but that is still taking a long time, especially in the regions of Japan. Also, traditionally Japan had kind of high volume, low value tours, so 30 people on a bus, kind of going around a tourist destination with a guide waving a flag or something like that, buying a cheap present on the way out and then disappearing again. So that mentality still remains within the country, and it's unfortunate that some of the larger competitors in the space, JTB, Kinki Nihon Tourist and HIS, these kind of companies, are still trying to perpetuate that model, even though it is slowly kind of being eroded by technology and a shift towards individual travel. So even at Sengain, we've seen that shift from group travel to FIT in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, it's been a huge shift for us. We've renovated huge parts of our grounds to cover for this. We used to have a restaurant, for example, that had a capacity of 500 people. We slashed that to 250 to give people more space, so families and smaller groups could enjoy themselves. And actually, this year we've decided to close it completely because that number of kind of group travelers is just simply not appearing anymore. People are coming in smaller groups. They're wanting to spend more quality time, doing more engaging and interesting experiences. And COVID has simply accelerated that trend domestically. So I think some people are trying to force it back to the way it was before, pre-COVID, but that's, in my eyes, is not really going to happen. I mean, think about 9/11 and airport security after that. It didn't suddenly become loose again after a year or two. We've kept with these new habits, and I think the kind of new habits being founded, post-COVID, smaller group travel, pre-bookings, in destination experiences are going to stick with us as well. So we've seen improvement in things like cashless payments, online booking, foreign language signage, training of staff to deal with foreign languages. We've still got a long way to go, but we are slowly getting there. And I think from now on, we're going to see a greater experience travel in destination experience sector increase. So things like booking experiences via OTAs or booking via companies' own websites. But again, that's a space that's still not developed well. Overseas partners like Klook, KK TripAdvisor, companies like that are trying to make their way into Japan and doing well in some areas. But again, businesses in regions don't necessarily know how to implement those technologies. So if tech companies are coming in, they need to have solutions that are A, in Japanese with the Japanese backend, and B, turnkey solutions essentially. So a whole package, because it's very likely that their systems that they have in house, won't be compatible and won't result in a increase in efficiency as well as sales too. So we've got a lot of challenges coming up. Much of it is to do with the outdated nature of the domestic Japanese travel industry. And while we are making some progress, there is still a very, very long way to go. And I think global technological solutions to some of Japanese problems would be very helpful, but they also need Japanese language and also perhaps maybe Japanese partners as well to work with to introduce into companies in this country.
Yeah, and I think a legacy of what Alex is talking about can be seen across many cities in Japan where you have cookie cutter type of hotels, high volume, low value, and they're all empty. We have seen, some quite funky brands coming in, and some funky Japanese brands in the hotel world. Springs to mind. Naha Strata Hotel is exceptional, and their sister hotel Antibroom. We've seen the Ace set up in Kyoto. Muni is down in Kyoto. So interesting things have been happening. So I guess if there's any hotel investors watching and they're interested in repositioning some of these box rooms, which I don't really think are going to be of any use in the future, to be honest, as even the domestic market is not that keen on big volume, low value tours. It was sort of propped up a little bit by the Chinese market, 2013, 2014. But by 2015, 2016, originally that first wave of Chinese travelers was an 80-20 split, group to FIT. Within 2 years, it had flipped, totally flipped. And so even before this pandemic had hit, we'd started to see that actually that model was not going to work. So, and the other point I think around tech that's important, particularly for the people listening and watching today, is Japan is still struggling to kind of digitalize holistically its hotels. They will often have like a PMS here, maybe a reservation system there, and something else here. None of it actually ever talks to each other, and you'll find that there'll be an army of Japanese staff who have to download a spreadsheet, upload a spreadsheet, download a spreadsheet, upload a spreadsheet, and yet there are perfectly viable solutions that will integrate all of that. So that would be an element of opportunity, I think, in the future.
Thank you, Alex and Ashley. So, touching upon the technology bit here from both of what you said. So, how do you think? Because I know we have some partner companies as well. So, China, for example, and similarly for Japan, these two markets are considered to be very difficult to, crack. Like if somebody who's not from the region wants to enter these markets, it is very, very difficult to actually be able to provide, even if you have a local language product for that matter, just to be able to, go in there and do a viable business is kind of difficult. So obviously there's a culture plays a big role here, the cultural disconnect, and, people, the rest of the world do not really understand or, there is this disconnecting. How do you think, any of you, so my question is open for all of you here, how do you think that can be overcome by, all of us for that matter?
Well, Japanese decision makers in businesses, especially kind of local businesses, are looking for the first thing they'll look at when they look at a company's website is what's called kaisha gaiyo. So they'll look at the overall history of the company, how much investment it's had, who the board are, how reputable that company is, and then they'll start thinking about the proposal document. And also, the precedent is very, very important here. So work that you've done before that's similar to the project that you're trying to achieve is incredibly important in achieving trust with Japanese companies. Also, relationship building needs to be done for a very long time. Coming straight in with a business proposal is not like a great approach for a Japanese company. It's better to kind of slowly build up a relationship and then ease into, proposing a solution with them as well, and make them think it's bespoke is quite important. But I do understand how incredibly difficult it is. I've taken many proposals to my board of directors and things like that, and I've seen the reactions. If the first page is in English, it just goes in the bin essentially. It's all got to be in perfect. Once the company name, the kanji wasn't right, so that's literally the kind of level that we'll be looking at. To make sure that everything's proposed properly and that you're a trustworthy source who shows interest in their business and really wants to grow it as well. So it's a cultural minefield, but huge opportunity as well, I think, at the same time.
Right. And is there anything at the government level that could potentially be done in terms of policies or stuff like that? I'm not really very aware. Apologies for my ignorance here, but is there anything that, could be taken up at the government level to help drive, getting more tech either tech investment or tech companies to come in, especially for the hospitality, travel, tourism sector, and to, of course, like you said, there are agents who are still sending faxes. I mean, I've heard the word fax after ages. So I was very, very surprised, especially when, it relates to a country like Japan, because for us, it's like Japan is a developed country, right? So it was kind of a shocker for me. So any thoughts there?
Well, I think, just recently, I say recently, it was probably 5 or 6 months ago, but the new Prime Minister, Suga-san, he made an initiative and has pushed for all the government agencies, to drive digitalization and make that, the forefront, and kind of, that's one of his big policies. In reality, how soon that leads out, I think you've heard Ashley, Alex, Noguchi-san talk about this, though. It's things take time here in Japan. You can present a turnkey solution, even like Alex had mentioned, right, with Japanese language software, all of that, but the relationship building, the time it takes to win the trust over, these things are going to take some time, and I think realistically we're maybe 5-10 years away from seeing that noticeable kind of digitalization and change happen in market. I think COVID has helped push the urgency along in a positive way, but yeah, that's my viewpoints.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you. Anything else that anybody else wants to add on to this particular point here?
In terms of market entry, Taka, do you want to go ahead? Sorry, mate.
Yeah. Then just wanted to add, the quarter of the population in Japan is over 65 years old, and they're the retired people have a lot of time and money, and they're the ones who spend a lot on domestic travel and outbound travel. And their style is still traveling style is the legacy style. It's a group tour. 40 people go on the one bus and visit like 10 places in 3 days. So that's the traditional, and that's what they're used to. They will be too worried if they have to book the itinerary on their book their trips on their own. They cannot manage well, right? So this is why it is hard to shift to all digital, because a lot of people in the travel industry are afraid of losing that big segment. So, and I think that's an important thing that we have to have in mind. But I think the time will come, and eventually there will be and the millennials and the younger crowd generations are using all digital. So we have to be prepared, but we are again going slow with it. Sorry, Ashley.
Yeah, I think in terms of successful, market entry in Japan is like a who's who of big companies which have failed, from Ford through to Tesco's through to Boots across the globe. But a good example of success is actually Paul Smith. So obviously centered around an iconographic figure, but a lot of his success, there's a lot of small print around his success, but he puts time and effort himself into the market. And a good example is after the earthquake, he was pretty much the first CEO to get on a plane and come and visit Tokyo, whereas most CEOs were trying to leave. So success can be built ground up, and Paul Smith shows that. But I think companies need to have a more expansive view of what time is. There's a Japanese phrase, 3 years sitting on a stone, implying that you should do nothing for 3 years, sit, look and learn, and then you'll be in a position to advise thereafter. And that's the sort of timelines I think companies need to think of, which of course is really going against the grain of current Silicon Valley type of do it now thinking. So I think those are some good localization tips.
Thank you, Ashley. And I think the last point that you mentioned, I've taken a note of that actually. So maybe if I come across any of our partners who are looking to make entry into Japan, I have to give them that 3-year tip that they need to first be there, learn and understand, and then think of getting into the market. So very, very interesting. Thank you for that. Satya, my question for you now is how do we effectively engage with the Japanese travelers post the pandemic? So you've already touched upon quite a few initiatives, but especially for Japanese travelers, if you could share your thoughts here.
Sure. So I think first we have to, with that question, we have to look at, what segment of Japanese travelers are you wanting to, to attract, right? As Taka-san mentioned, we have over a quarter of the population is age over 60, with 70% of the wealth sitting within that segment. Then of course you have family, you have the young millennials as well, and then also the very popular segment is kind of the 25 to 40-year-old females in Japan. So we say Joshitabi market, which is like the office ladies. So for each of these, I think as a whole, Japanese, I think more so than other countries, they're very, very research heavy and do their homework. They're looking kind of similar to looking back at business. If you're wanting to do business, it's the same kind of concept from the Japanese traveler. They're looking at all of your digital channels. They're looking at every touch point they can to say, okay, what destination am I wanting to go to? Do they have a social media presence? What does that social media presence look like? Is it tailored to Japanese travelers? So do you have a Japan specific social media page? Do you have a Japan specific website that instead of using like a Google Translate widget, for example, is it a native language Japanese website that is specifically tailored to their interests? And I think post pandemic, you need to make sure that you're providing as much relevant information in an easy on your site or on your consumer touch points, about your entry requirements. Post pandemic, what does that look like? Do you have to have a vaccination? Do you have to have a negative PCR test? Make it very simple to understand for them. Are you disseminating that information as well through all of your channels? So are you using Twitter? Are you using YouTube? Are you putting that information out in native Japanese towards those consumers and travelers to attract them and raise the awareness and educate them about your destination? And I think once you've done that, most importantly, are you tracking those channels? Are you tracking all of that data you're putting out? Are you using like a CMS system, or like some sort of analytical software like Adobe Analytics, for example, to say, okay, we've had 5,000 people from the area of Kyoto interested in going to San Francisco, just as an example. Are you then going back and retargeting those consumers? Okay, obviously they're interested in traveling to San Francisco. They're looking at our entry requirements. Are you then retargeting and showing them, a special offer you have for your destination? Are you looking at the data to see what age range they are, and then make tailoring customized ads towards them? So digital has so many different layers to it. So as just a brief summary, I think you just have to make sure you're disseminating the information that consumers are wanting and needing for Japan. That you make sure that all of that is very well branded and in line with your brand, with great content, and then tracking and retargeting your digital efforts to make sure you're getting ROI to attract those travelers.
Yeah, the detail point I think is important. A couple of years back now, must be a couple of years back, a very large US American online travel company did some fairly detailed work on what is driving Japanese consumer destination choices. Is it the price of the hotel? Is it the beaches? Is it the mountains? And actually they drilled down and down and down and down, and it came to the conclusion they would choose something that meant there was no fear of messing up. FOMO, not FOMO. And actually it wasn't necessarily that the beach was nice. But it was that the information path from when they looked at the hotel would give them, okay, I turn right, it's 50 meters, I cross the road, go over the boulevard, over the bridge, and there is the beach. And that gave them the sense of security to book because the detail was there. And, you know, I think that point is missed quite often, that level of detail is required. And it was a huge piece of work. Wasn't publicly available, so I can't tell you much more about that. But effectively, it was all came down to, okay, this has the most information, and therefore I'm buying this. It wasn't this is the cheapest, this is the best, this is the sexiest. None of that. Most information. It means there's no fear of messing up.
Absolutely. So, talking about I just wanted to also bring in the channels aspect, like, especially when we talk about hotels or when travelers are looking to make bookings. So I know we work with Rakuten as well as one of our partners, and it is one of the biggest OTAs when we talk about the Japanese market. So how possibly can, companies like these bring an impact, or what role can they further play in changing things around or making the recovery more faster? And also wanted to understand from you, what does recovery look like for all of you? Like, what is the timeline? When do you think things will start picking up, and thoughts on that, please?
Do you want me to go first? I'll go first on timelines. I think realistically, Asia in general had what could be defined as a good pandemic. We are having an exceptionally bad recovery, and it's completely the opposite from what we see in parts of Europe and parts of the US, where there was a very bad pandemic and seems like a very good recovery. So I don't think, we've got here in Japan, I think the clear focus is what's happening at the end of July with the Olympics. I don't think we'll get any clarity out of the government till that's done and they've ticked that box. And then I think they might start to look at like a roadmap to recovery. There is some talk of vaccine passports, et cetera, but at the moment we've really got no sight. So anything we say is really kind of second guessing. I don't really imagine inbound coming back in any real volume till 2024, 2025, maybe. Outbound, I think there will be a wave of revenge tourism coming out of Japan, as there will be from every country, and visitor friends and family market will be strong. I think that initial wave will calm down a little bit. But that's my thought on that. I don't think it's possible to put a timeline on, because there's so many things that we no longer control. We don't control borders being shut, quarantines being put in, and how many vaccines and PCR tests you need to get into one place and get out of another one. So it's become much more complicated, and those things add to a barrier to sales. And particularly with Japan, where we've just discussed, you need to provide so much detail. Suddenly there is not only a lot of detail you need to provide, but there's lots of things that you actually need to do. Like once upon a time, if you wanted to go abroad, you literally needed your passport. Off you go. You need a bit more now. So I think it will take some time.
Yeah, and to further, just one point to add there from Ashley's remarks as well is everything, no matter what what destination, how safe it is, or if everybody is vaccinated. All of this is caveat to right now the Japanese policy from the government immigration is that there's a 2-week quarantine in place for return Japanese travelers. So if they leave and go to a destination, they have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine when they get back. So everything is just dependent on that one catch. Once we see that 2-week quarantine get lifted, everything else then follows. So, but like timeline, we just got out of a state of emergency, which has been laxed, but then is going back up again for the Olympics. Things are changing day by day, week to week. So, again, it's that 2-week though, I think is the big linchpin to this.
And if you look at the two major sporting competitions on at the moment, the European Championships and the Olympics, and look at the difference in, how those two events are being carried out, with people celebrating, in Britain, and everything being locked down and miserable in Tokyo. It's kind of a good indicator of how things in Japan are at the moment. As Ashley said, it's a bad recovery. There's no two ways about it. As far as inbound tourism is concerned, I've absolutely no idea, to be honest with you. I mean, the goalposts keep getting moved, so we can't say anything about it. Unfortunately, the Japan, travel authority, whatever the government organizations, are not giving us any, roadmap for inbound travel. We just simply don't know, what their thoughts are going forwards. So we've got a while to go. Domestic market, we opened up our gardens, at the start of this month, and then the lockdown, not lockdown, is it? The state of emergency in Tokyo came into play again, and we saw a huge drop off again of visitors. So even the domestic market at the moment isn't really moving, and I don't think it will until after the Olympics. And obviously, being risk averse, the Japanese probably won't be traveling abroad in huge numbers until things calm down significantly, I don't think. So the first thing to look at really is the domestic market and the maneuverability of that, and then think about outbound later on, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex and Satya, Ashley. So we touched upon the Olympics, and of course, we have all been reading a lot about, what is happening and how things are moving. So given that all of you are on ground there, is there anything that we do not know, or, how can possibly, at least the domestic market, because obviously inbound is currently not possible, but are the locals being allowed, or how is the pickup there? And is there any way that, we could see, or the hotel industry, the travel industry could see a little bit of movement because of this Olympics?
I think let's talk about the positives of Olympics. What you have during games time is usually an influx of well-spending, but not very many corporates. So the hotels which have been contracted to provide rooms for the corporate sponsors and for some of the teams, as well as some of the food and beverage that needs to be provided to the athletes' village, etc., etc. I think that will be a really important boost to that side of things. It's limited though, because you needed to have won the contract X number of months ago, X number of years ago, through the bidding system. And the Olympics, unlike football World Cup and rugby World Cup, which bring in large numbers of, never will do because it's so expensive. But what you have with the Olympics is an unprecedented TV audience to showcase your country. And that is always the benefit of the Olympics if you get it right, as I think Britain did in 2012 with the London Olympics, as I think Russia did really well with the Football World Cup in 2018, and I think Japan did a good job for Rugby World Cup 2019. I do not know how an empty stadium will play out on TV, particularly with athletics. And as much as I enjoy athletics, it's as much about the crowd whipping up the athletes, because there's a lot of downtime in athletic sport. There's warm-ups, there's people jogging around the track. There's a lot of time when nothing happens. And then, if the highlight of the day is the 100 meters, that's 10 seconds, 9.8 or whatever. So I'm not entirely sure how that will play out to a TV audience. So whether it will have any positive long-term benefit in a post-Olympic tourism boom, not convinced yet. Maybe, hopefully I'm wrong.
I mean, Ashley's point about, being featured on TV and, the media attention is hugely important, I think. If Japan uses this opportunity wisely and, focuses on promoting the regions and focuses on promoting, product going forwards, it's a great advertising potential. It's just that I working in, regional government spheres here and also nationally as well, I've not seen a great deal of preparation towards that. So I'm a little bit concerned that, this dead time in between events and things like that is not going to be filled with high quality content promoting the regions of Japan. That is a slight worry I have. If it does go ahead and it's promoted well, I think it could be a great boon going forwards, and perhaps raise the next level of travelers to Japan in the future. But again, it just depends on the implementation and how well it's carried out.
Yeah, I mean, as an example for Visit Britain during the London 2012 Olympics, if a TV crew came from, I don't know, the US or India or wherever it was coming from, and they said, we really want to film Big Ben. Okay, fine, we can get you the license for Big Ben, but first you need to go to this festival in North Wales, film that, interview the locals, and here's vouchers for the train, here's all of the hotel vouchers, and here's a few drink coupons, so go and enjoy yourself. Once you've done that, your license to film London will be ready when you come back. So you can work with the media in order to tell your story. And I don't think that's happened here to the degree to which it was done in the UK back in 2012.
I think to Alex's point, there is definitely a huge opportunity where, examples like farm to table or kimono stuff, like there's so many local things. If relevant videos, beautiful videos could be plugged in, whether it is during the break time or whether it is the waiting time, like Ashley mentioned. I know that would be not very preferable, because when you're wanting to see how the athletes are moving, you do not really suddenly want to see. But then things can be done in very interesting and innovative ways. So it's just about having that mindset and trying to do that thing to take Japan forward, basically. So definitely, I mean, lovely. Any other thoughts on the overall recovery, or how the travel hospitality industry? We've not really talked much about the hotel or the hospitality industry per se. So any thoughts either on the technology side or distribution, or how things can move forward? Any suggestions for hoteliers who might be watching the session live here?
Yeah, so I think with the hotel market, what we now have is massive oversupply here. So, and I suspect that's pretty much the same around many places. And I think going forward, the survival will depend on the properties that are powered by the right tech, and basically the survival of the fittest, which are the most adaptable. Not just the fittest. I think hotels are going to have to reinvent themselves a little bit here, whether it's as a work-life work vacation places, or whether it's to become much more thematic. For example, I saw in the UK there's now a Brewdog beer hotel where there is beer on tap in each room. So I think in Japan, if you had a sake brewery that put together a ryokan, a Japanese hotel, which served Japanese sake on tap, that would be quite an interesting story, and I think it would do really well, both domestically and internationally. So it's going to be around survival of the fittest and the most adaptable, and the ones that are powered probably with the most integrated bits of tech behind it. Yeah, it's not that efficient to be faxing in reservations.
I think one important point is that the Japanese market for hotels is quite saturated, but at the same time, it's saturated with very poor quality product. So you've got to remember that if you can create, really good boutique hotels, small scale kind of private residences, targeting perhaps luxury travelers or something like that, or have an incredibly creative concept, something like that. These things will appeal to international travelers and probably the domestic market as well. So I think the saturation of the market is something that can be overlooked, because simply the quality of the offering at the moment is really not that good, and it is managed very, very poorly as well. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for regional development of properties for hoteliers looking at coming into Japan, and I know there are incentives for development as well being provided on the government level too.
I think what the regions might be able to benefit from is the growing global work from anywhere, the class of people who are now working from anywhere. So, they might want to spend 6, weeks to 8 weeks in Japan, and it would be cost inefficient to do that in Tokyo. They might want to spend a week here because there's plenty to do, a week in Kyoto, but then there's been no reason whatsoever, if the Wi-Fi wasn't good and the product was there, they couldn't spend a couple of weeks in Kagoshima exploring that and working while they're there. So I think that would be really, really important development for hoteliers looking to reposition themselves.
Also, while we're talking about hoteliers, one question that was running in my mind: how is the B&B scene in Japan? Because obviously, when we talk about Europe, US, lots of parts of Asia, Airbnb, of course, is one of the key channels that's pushing the B&B business. So I don't think it has a big share in Japan per se, but otherwise, traditionally, how's the B&B market, and is there any way that local B&Bs could be playing a role in recovery per se, whether it's domestic, mostly domestic, or international also for that matter? Any thoughts from anybody here?
I don't want to keep talking, but there's 84,000 registered hotel properties and B&Bs in Japan across the country, which compares to the US, which has 55,000. So there's a vast amount of accommodation here, and much of it. So, for example, that 32 million that came in 2019, 75% of that was from East Asia, and it was short haul, short stay, and a lot of the accommodation is designed for that. So one room with like 5 beds, 6 beds, and I think that will need to change over time as well. But Taka also is doing a lot of work in the regions of Japan, so it might be interesting to hear about what they're doing.
We sell, culture experience product like sushi making, tea ceremony, and a lot of people who are staying in Airbnb actually book these tours and activities. But on average, the age group is like 25 to 30. They're not backpackers, but they have low budget travelers. Because the hotel price in Japan is really expensive, and I think those people want to use Airbnb, save their money, but spend more days in Japan, maybe traveling in the whole country for 1 month, but stay Airbnb from next to next. And those are the main segment, I think. Or like a villa located on like a beautiful beach or somewhere in middle of nowhere, where people cannot just come and you'll be on your own. I think some people book that system, but overall, in my personal opinion, Airbnb is not a big hit. More like hotels and ryokans are more popular accommodation style. I think the one reason is the language barrier. All of them are in Japanese language, obviously. If you go to supermarkets, convenience store, everywhere, and it's more like a peace of mind to stay in a hotel where you can converse in English language.
I think that's a very important point you make about the language barrier, Taka. Satya, you wanted to add something, I believe. Do you want to add in?
No, I was just shaking my head in agreement with Noguchi on there. Just I think the convenience. I mean, even for myself, if I travel, I've looked at Airbnb, but I always revert back. My wife and son. It's if I can wake up and then just go downstairs and go have a nice brunch, not have to leave the property. Basically the smallest amount of effort that I can do while I'm traveling is usually the path of least resistance is usually. In my case, so that was just my thought process.
Right, thank you. So we have a couple of questions from one of our audience members, Sean Mendes. So I'm showing his first. Okay, so we want to show his first question here. I think we've touched upon this, but how important is being able to speak in Japanese to the fact to do business or partner with a Japanese company?
It's less important than it used to be. I think especially if you're dealing with businesses that are in Tokyo at scale, if you're going into the regions, it's much more difficult. It's always better to have somebody in the interim to help you out as well. All kinds of proposals have to be, checked and authorized by several people before they go up to management and things like that. There is that system here still. So obviously it makes things a lot easier to be in the native language of the people that you're dealing with. But I think it's less important for younger, kind of more agile businesses, especially in the technology sector, who are willing to be more forward thinking. But if you're going to deal with a traditional Japanese tourism industry business, it's almost, certainly got to be in Japanese, I think.
Right. And another question that Sean has is right here on the screen. So Japan has been synonymous with technology. Do you see that Japan can leverage this aspect to bring in more footfalls once the borders open?
Can I just chime in here really quickly again? Japan's synonymous with technology, but they don't tend to use it. They make a lot of it, but don't actually use so much of it, unfortunately. So it's a very strange dichotomy that Japan makes some of the parts for the most advanced technology in the world, and in fact designs parts for it as well, but doesn't implement it. It's very strange. The travel and tourism industry. I started work for a company in the year 2000, my first job, and I've never used a fax machine in my life until I came to this country. And we still have one in the office. It's bizarre. It's just I can't get my head around it. So there's like holding on to legacy technologies, not kind of moving with the times and replacing systems that aren't broke. That's kind of one way of thinking about it. I think Japan is getting better with technology. Cashless payments and things like that have become mainstream now. They're almost anywhere you go, you can use a number of providers to do that. Almost too many, in fact. But again, some aspects are still incredibly low tech. For example, if you get the Shinkansen, you go pay by credit card, get to the station, and you'll have to print out about 10 different tickets to take with you to get on one train. It's ridiculous. When a QR code would suffice instead. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does that match what your opinion is?
Yeah, I think Japan can use technology, but whether it will is actually the more important question. And how will it use that technology, right? Yeah, I think it's struggling to implement it domestically, let alone use it as a tool to drive inbound travel.
Yeah. I think socially too. I think Japanese are very particular what technology they're willing to use. One thing I found surprising coming to Japan 5 years ago was that like even my mother-in-law, who's 75 years old, loves using Line, which is the social media messaging application. And so she's sending me emojis and stickers and everything from her smartphone, and she's always on her phone using Line. And so that was surprising to me, just to see kind of this older generation so in tune with some of these digital technologies. But still a very cash heavy society. We are seeing cashless payments, like Alex mentioned, various ways to pay, but the minute you step outside of a large city, you're going right back to cash again. So I think the change is coming, but again, I think the key point is it's a slow process. It's going to take time, but yeah, that's takes time.
Right. So, in past few discussions, a point has come up, and I just wanted to check if that holds true for what we're discussing here. Often, people are very scared when it comes to adapting to new technology, and it could be that they think that it is very difficult, or the fear of new. Basically, I would not think that is true when we talk about Japan, because like you guys said, that you guys are experts in developing technology, but when it comes to adoption, there is like a disconnect or a mismatch. So to Satya's point, right, your mother-in-law, very easy to use on. So it all comes down to how intuitive the technology is. Like all of us today are able to use a Netflix or an Uber or any kind of mobile apps without being taught that, whether it's the previous generation, us, or the next few generations. A child today is born and he can just operate a mobile without any guidance. In fact, my nephew teaches me some of the games on the phone. So is there any truth in the fact about the fear of technology, and that could be the reason why the travel and hospitality industry in Japan is lacking behind in terms of adapting or adopting any kind of new systems or technology?
Well, I think first it's going to be, what is the cost to implement the technology, and that's very first and foremost. It can be, you can have the most easy to use user interface, the most, amazing application, what have you. But if the entry barriers, especially for small businesses, which there are a ton in Japan, of small restaurants, small mom and pop, retail stores, what have you. If those entry barriers are quite high, they don't see a need to change. So I think you have to, to be effective, I think those technologies, you have to kind of, offer it at a very, very low cost, along with, the setup and everything else that's involved to implement that technology. I think without doing that you're going to receive hesitation, which I think goes, I think is global, right?
So you're highlighting the cost sensitivity part rather than the fear of adoption part, right? Okay. Any other opinions? Yeah.
Some apps do blow up very quickly in Japan, though. Clubhouse is a good example. I mean, Clubhouse, user base just phenomenally grew at the start of the COVID pandemic. Whether it's still going or not, I kind of gave up halfway through, but that may still be there as well. Line's another example. And in Japan, there may be some, potential for somebody to develop, like in the Chinese model with WeChat and branching that out into a super app. There is possibility for trusted channels like Line to do that kind of thing as well. And they are trying to do it. I don't know how many people use Line Pay or, these kind of sub applications or whatever, but, using something that's already trusted and already a part of people's lives is certainly something that is a potential gateway to the future, I think.
I think we also... Yeah, go on, mate. Sorry.
I was just going to ask Taka what he thought. I mean, as a user, of technology like this in Japan, what do you think? I mean, you introduced us to Amazon online tours and things like that as well. So, I mean, what do you recommend?
Yeah, we do use the Amazon Pay or even the Bitcoin. We accept the Bitcoin payments as well. But anyways, going back to the questions about the fear. I think there is a little bit of fear. In other words, leaders don't want to take a risk. And if they end up in failure, people will be pointing out to him and say, go away, right? So I think, and a lot of people, those management people, right? Sitting board members, sitting on whatever associations, or those people over usually 60 years old, and they just don't know how to use the Line Pay, or they don't know what's Bitcoin, or they don't know how to use Slack, or that kind of things. So they just don't want to take any decision. They just don't know about it. Even the head of a digital minister is like over 60 years old, and how can we we like deploy the latest technology into like all the industries? I think so. I think there's a bit of fear in that sense.
Yeah, there's a disconnect between technology adoption in the B2C world, which is basically my own personal choice, and then adoption of technology into the B2B world, which is exactly what Taka's saying, that as decision is by committee, you don't want to stick your neck out on the line and say, right, I'm signing up to Line Corporate Solutions, whatever that might be, because if it goes wrong, it's me who pushed it and I'm in trouble. But as an individual user, there's no risk so much. So I think there is this disconnect between private usage of technology, which is well adapted to, and then that not translating into the corporate world.
I think that is very well put, Ashley, when you put it the way you have, the B2B and the B2C aspect. So really thank you for that nugget there. So I think we do not have any further questions from our audience at this point. And this, of course, has been a lovely discussion. I'm so very happy to be part of it. So thank you again to all my speakers here for their valuable insights and for sharing your knowledge. I would want to now pass on to each one of you to share any final summary or parting words before we wrap up the session. So let's start with Ashley yourself.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for hosting, and also hosting at last minute as well, stepping into Vinny's shoes. So thank you very much, and to the panel as well. I think basically Japan's tourism future has great potential. We finished up on 32 million travelers in 2019, and the goal was for 60 million by 2030. I think 60 million is potential. I'm not going to put a timeline to that, but that 60 million can fit quite comfortably across Japan. It cannot fit comfortably into 3 or 4 locations. So I think that will be Japan's challenge in order to accommodate that. 3,000 kilometers from the top to the bottom, which is give or take the same as the east coast of the US seaboard. So there's plenty of things to do, from skiing in the north, beaches in the south, to the world's largest metropolis here in Tokyo. So Japan's got the potential, and it needs to activate that potential and drive both, I think, regional and seasonal spread.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. That was so well put. And frankly, after being a part of this discussion, I so want to visit Japan, because there's so many new things I've learned today, and really want to experience some of these things that we have discussed. So thank you so much, Ashley. There.
Maybe one of Taka's new products could be to have like a fax experience, where you bring foreigners to a Japanese office and teach them how to use a fax. I don't know, just chucking it out there.
I know. That could be one item on the itinerary that Taka could be putting in. So Taka, I go to you next. A quick summary and your parting note for the audience here.
Yeah, thank you for the event opportunity and having me here. Japan, like everybody said, we are really doing bad in terms of COVID. We just began the vaccination around 2 months ago, but we are really picking up quick. In 2 months, over 35 million people got a first shot already, and more than 10 million people got a second shot already. So we are progressing really well. And hopefully it's going to continue, and the Olympics will be held without any big problem, and hope it'll be a trigger in terms of international tourism industry for Japan. Like everybody said, Japan is such a beautiful country. It looks like a small country on the map, but there are so many things to do and watch and eat and to do. Even me, the Japanese, when I go north to the south, and every time I go, there's something new that I find, and it's really interesting country. It's like it's an island country, and it's the culture and food tradition is unlike the other countries. So I really hope everybody will include Japan as in the bucket list, and hope to see everybody here in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taka. Absolutely. I think most of the countries are rediscovering the domestic people. They're, of course, rediscovering their native countries. And thanks to COVID, we're all, understanding how beautiful our own homeland is. So thank you for sharing that. Alex, over to you.
Well, thank you for hosting today, and also inviting me along to have a chat with everybody here. I wish Vinny well as well. I hope he recovers soon. Been watching some of the other sessions, and he looked kind of sleep deprived because of the time difference as well, I think. So I hope he's feeling better. Basically, going forwards, the Olympics is a great opportunity to promote Japan. Hopefully, going forwards, we can see, as Ashley said, distribution to regions instead of focusing on, 2 or 3 key areas. And in those regions have lower volume, high value tourism, where people are spending more in destination doing, a series of different experiences or whatever. In order for that to happen, there needs to be development of booking systems, further partnerships with OTAs, creation of interesting content, not just simply parroting the kind of experiences that you can do abroad and things like that, or creating experiences from other regions of Japan. It has to be unique to that particular region. And then obviously the promotion and storytelling behind that to get people interested in it, and the promotion channels that are going to be necessary to manage all that going forwards. So it's a bright future ahead. I think Japan can do very, very well in tourism, but it's going to take a little while before you get started. So bear with us until you can come and visit. And then come and see me down in Kagoshima. Love to have you down here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you. Satya, your parting words, your summary, please.
Yeah. So yes, thank you, Neha, and thank you so much, Vinny, for this afternoon. I'm not sure what else I can say that hasn't been said already from the rest of the speakers today, but thank you all as well for the time. Yeah, we are looking. There is the bright future ahead. I think if you're interested, in the Japan market, and you're wanting to learn more, or you're wanting to introduce your business or gain outbound customers, please do contact Ashley or I. We're happy to be of service. And then very quickly, I mentioned influencers before, but we do have a new platform that's been released earlier this year, which matches brands and influencers, called Swayfluence. So if that is of interest to you as well, please do contact us. We're happy to help you in that regard. But thank you all, and please stay safe and get vaccinated. All right, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Satya. Let me again, from the bottom of my heart, really thank you so very much for being an awesome panel that you have been today. And a huge shout out to Vinny again. Please take care, man. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here and be part of this panel. Huge shout out to all the attendees for joining in. It is because of you that we are here and we are putting this series together. So thank you so much for tuning in, for your questions, and for hearing us and sharing your thoughts and opinion. And before we wrap it up, I have Vinicius here, and I'm sure he has some parting words. So Vinny, over to you, please.
First of all, thank you so much, Neha, for all your help, for all the great moderation. Yes, you did, and thank you for all the support. You're also from last year, that when we start together helping so much. Thank you so much for everything. I would like to thank so much Ashley. Thank you. If not you, we didn't will have this. You are the first one. You helped me to create it. So thank you so much. I hope the next year we can do it, or maybe on the next one, because we're going to have in September we will have Latin and Spain. So all Spanish speakers and Spain together in September, and in November we're going to have Europe, EMEA, and Africa. And end of Feb next year, beginning of March, we will have the second edition for US and Canada. So if you would like to join us, Ashley, Sakai, Osawa, Noguchi, Alex, will be a pleasure. So hope you can speak soon. Thank you so much for this great panel. It was an outstanding panel. I'm losing my voice again. So thank you so much.
Maybe we should plan a physical event in Japan next time.
Yeah, it will be awesome.
Yeah, in Kagoshima.
I will be joining.
Awesome, great one. Will be great. I'm picking all the companies.
We've got plenty of space to do it. So yeah, just let me know.
Let's talk about it.
Great venue.
That's a good thing that we need to do. That's a good thing about Travel Tech. Travel Tech is all about educational, but at the end also is a big network. And here you can create a big network between the very important companies and their directors or vice presidents, as persons as you, with now to stand in knowledge. And the attendance, I think that they love it. The entire week was great, awesome. So for the attendance also, thank you so much for your support. Also, thank you all the companies. Thank you all the sponsors for this. Thank you, everybody, and see everybody again in September. And of course, we'll speak maybe in the next days. I will send an email all to you. Like this, we generate more networking. Thank you so much, everybody, to be here. Have a nice evening, afternoon there. Cheers.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
And all the best for the Olympics. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.